Hi, so the original intro to this video got deleted because iMovie is just awesome. So I don't remember how that went, but basically this is a video about writer's block. So there you go. Oh, also, I wanted to put in this little disclaimer. These are mostly things that I've done that have worked for me. It doesn't mean that they will work for everyone, and this is not a comprehensive list. It's just some thoughts that I've had. So, all right, writer's block. It's one of those things that every artist or creative person experiences, and it can happen, as I most often experience it, in the middle of a project where you've reached a certain point and you have no idea how to continue, or it can be something that happens to you between projects when you're not actually working on anything and you just feel paralyzed and you feel like you can't start anything. Both options suck and can be very debilitating if it goes on for too long. So I thought I would make this little video that kind of puts a bunch of ideas to help you overcome writer's block into like a little list. And that is what I did. So I have a literal list that I wrote, and we're just going to go through them. A lot of these, by the way, are not meant to explicitly get you to be creating content. They're more just like a middle step between a place where you're not writing music at all and the ideal composition process. These are just things that kind of get you into that kind of creative way of thinking without having the full expectation of writing music. The first one of these is, and this kind of goes without saying, but it's to listen to music that you love. It can be a particular piece or a composer, but I don't think it can be overstated how important it is to remind yourself why you're doing what you're doing and why you love music. I also want to say that this is something that should be both inside and outside of the genre in which you're working. So if you were a concert music composer, like I'm assuming most of the people watching this are, listen to the pop music that you like, or jazz, or whatever it is. I think that there's also something to be said for the value of listening to music that's not directly in your career path. Contrary to that, something that I think is also kind of important and can be an interesting thing in these situations is to listen to music that you hate. And you can do different things with this. I mean, you can try to find something about it that you do actually like, or you could kind of dissect it and figure out what exactly it is that makes you hate it. Because if you're like in the middle of a project and you're feeling stuck and you feel like you can't write anything that you like, it's always valuable to know the elements of the music that you don't like so that you can kind of avoid those things. Something that's always valuable, I think, even if you are not experiencing writer's block, is to force yourself to write with restrictions. I'm currently writing a string quartet that I I wrote two 12-tone rows for, and the whole quartet is just going to be those two things and all of their permutation on the matrices and whatnot. And that's just like one example of something that you could do. I find that it's often actually quite liberating to be forced to use certain materials or to write a certain way, because then a part of the creative responsibility is given away and you don't have to worry about that anymore. Okay, so now we're going into some ideas where you might be between projects and you have no idea, like, kind of where you want to go next. One of these is to write for an ensemble that you've never written for before, or, in the same vein, like, just doing things that you haven't done, like maybe writing in a certain form or something like that. And it kind of goes along with the writing with restrictions, but this is kind of specifically designed to, like, direct your attention toward just things that you haven't tried. Because I think, I feel like you always learn something new when you're writing a piece, or at least that's the goal. And so this is a good way to kind of ensure that that is happening. This next one might seem a little bit narcissistic, but I think it is totally acceptable to kind of go back and listen to something that you've done already that you're proud of. And even if it's not necessarily to like reflect on what made that specific piece successful, and I think that's valuable, but I think it's also just good for morale and knowing that you are capable of making yourself proud. Because experiencing writer's block for a certain amount of time can be very crippling, and it can really get to your mental health. And it's always important to just make sure that you're not judging yourself, and that you recognize that you are valuable and that your music is valuable. Okay, so this next one is kind of for like if you're working on a project already and you're kind of like stuck in the middle of it. And the idea is you duplicate whatever it is that you're working on so that you have your original whatever. But then in this duplicate, you remove the music that starts to get you stuck. So that might be a certain section or even just a couple bars. But then you take that duplicate that is now without that portion of the music and just try to take it in a totally different direction. And again, this is not necessarily to get you to be writing the new ideal version of that piece. It's just to get you to be exercising your writing abilities in a way that will take the music and the material that you have and be able to do different things with it. Another thing you can do, kind of in the same vein, is break your piece down into like its most bare elements, and this way it's easier to kind of decide what the most important aspects of your piece are. And this way, once you have those small elements, it's much more easy to go about processes like melodic development, because you have every single component right there, and you can just kind of go crazy with that. I've never actually done this, but orchestrating a non-orchestral piece that you've already written seems like it would be a good way of being creative without needing to be the full creative that's required to be writing music. And then something that I have done is orchestrating someone else's music. I've done 2 Debussy preludes. The first one that I did was actually for this purpose of getting past writer's block, because I really wanted to be orchestrating music, but I wasn't writing any notes. So there was nothing to be orchestrated, and so I went to the Sunken Cathedral prelude that is very over orchestrated, and I just went with that because I was like, well, these are notes that already exist, so I don't even have to worry about that part. And then you can go the opposite way too, with reducing an orchestral piece to like piano or a different ensemble. You could reduce it to string quartet or piano trio or something like that. And then I think this one is one of the more important ones, but let yourself write what you want to write and not just what you're supposed to be working on. I spent 2 years of college basically being told to write. Basically, I was being encouraged to write chamber music. Whenever I would bring orchestral music in, it was always like we would go ahead and do the lesson or whatever, but it was always prefaced with, this isn't gonna be played by anyone, and you should really be doing the chamber stuff just so that you can get recordings, so that you can use the recordings for Summerfest, competitions, grad school, stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I went ahead and was consistently writing chamber music. But when I was stuck with the chamber music, I always had the orchestral music, and I was like, well, I don't really care if this is gonna be played or not. I'm just gonna go ahead and write this because it was just a way to keep my brain consistently working creatively. Then here's a non-musical thing, like working on career-related things, rather than like trying to do something that's related to specifically writing music. This can be something like improving your website, or like engraving some parts that need to be engraved, or sending emails, stuff as simple as that. Just doing something to further your career consistently, I think is a really good thing to do. And then other non-musical stuff, reading is good, just about anything. Something that a lot of composers in the past have recommended to their descendants is to take a walk. It may not get you all the way back to where you want to be, but it's at least a break from, you know, staring at staff paper and a piano or a computer or whatever it is. And the last thing I have on this little list that I have here is to experience non-musical works of art that inspire you. You know, we all appreciate art through many different mediums, and I think that sometimes it's really just important to step away from the specifically musical aspect of it, and experience it that way. For me personally, play some video games, watch some movies. I read very sometimes. But yeah, I don't know. It's something that is really helpful to me. Okay, so I know that this list is by no means comprehensive. They're just some ideas that I've been kind of gathering throughout the day, and I don't know. I hope they're helpful to somebody. So yeah, thanks for watching.